We are live. I set up my PlayStation app. Okay.
Sorry, I had to get my daughter set up on YouTube so she's not sitting there staring at me, waiting for me to be done.
Okay, we live now, so we all good. What's good, RFL community? How you guys doing? Appreciate you guys coming through for the RFL podcast. It has returned, and I'm looking at guys in the chat. What's good, Dank Derek? What's good, Jack? Big boy. Appreciate you coming through. You too, Ladarius. Jack, well, we got some topics we're going to be covering here for the RFL podcast. Just simply pretty much about the awards and just pretty much the playoffs coming up. It's going to be a big week. I'm planning on making a trailer that's going to be pretty epic for you guys, but limited time, so I'm definitely gonna have to work on that pretty much right after this podcast. And the guys I got with me, I did have Mitch, but his mic, I don't know what's going on. What you say, Forzy and Bill? You said like it was going down the interstate.
Yeah, it sounded like he was going down the interstate pretty fast.
Yeah,
Windows down.
Yeah, pretty bad. Like he had to go, but he'll be in the comments. There he is. There you go, Mitch. But yeah, I got Coach Forzy here with me. He'll be talking about his team and also be getting asked questions too, along with Bill. But without further ado, man, we're just gonna go right ahead with the playoffs. Well, talking about the awards, and the way we're gonna do it is we're gonna go through each question, but by each conference. So we're gonna start off, since I'm in the AFC file right now. We're just gonna ask the questions and we'll show the awards first, talk about other things, and then move on to the playoff things and finish it out with wild card playoff matchups that we're looking forward to. But let's start off with looking at the yearly awards here for the AFC. The MVP, which is going to show up first here, Layne Kerney. Layne Kerney, the quarterback of the Bulls. I mean, he was a great quarterback this year, man. Looking at his stats, going over there right now on the page, so that way I don't have to switch through the list here. He's not even showing up here. What's going on? Well, we might as well go through the stats then. But Layne Kerney, man, quarterback, you can see the record. Able to lead the Bulls to the number one AFC team, a 12-3-1 team. He has got the MVP honors. Now, the way it's going to work with guys actually winning the award, well, the AFC awards will stand. You guys will be able to pick this year the MVP depending on the two that are selected from the conferences. And then also looking at the Coaches of the Year award, we were going to go off with the coaches, with the user coach that was the closest up, as you can see here. But this is all switched around. So from coaches having to leave the file so that we could stream the game, what we had to do, we had to make it where it's going to have to be voted on, because to be honest, a lot of coaches that should be up here just aren't up here simply because they were constantly getting off their team, but only to stream their game. But I think we should just go through who the winners are of the instead of the stats, Bill, to be honest, because I don't want to have to go back and switch to each player individual stats. So we're just going to do it that way. But Layne Kerney,
I can go through the stats for you while you're doing the.
Oh, okay, well, how about we do it that way then? So I'll bring up the player, you go through the stats, you talk about the stats, and then we can go down there for each player. So stats right here for Layne Kerney. Bill got you with that.
All right, so Layne Kerney finished the season with a 65% completion and 4,200 yards passing, 4,263 to be exact, and 33 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. Averaged passer rating of 106.3 throughout the whole season. So a pretty big season.
Yeah, it's definitely a big season right there for Layne Kerney. Definitely deserving of the MVP award, I would have to say, especially at the quarterback position. And to get the Bulls from, last season. They were on the come up last season, and this year they just stepped their game up even more, being that number one team in the AFC. But that's for the MVP of the AFC. Now we're starting to get into the individual awards. Of course, if you're the MVP of the league, you're most likely going to be the offensive player of the league if you're a quarterback. And so that's the same award right there. Well, 2 awards for Layne Kerney. He'll be the Offensive Player of the Year and the MVP this year for the Bulls, so no need to go into his stats anymore. So moving on next, we'll go on to the Defensive Player of the Year for the AFC, and that Defensive Player of the Year is the Sentinels defensive end, Wendell DiMache, 93 overall defensive end. He definitely is deserving of that of that Defensive Player of the Year award status there, and Bill's about to get you guys with the stats here.
Yeah, so DeMonte had 21 sacks on the season. That's a huge number. I'm not sure what the RFL record is. Is it like 22 or something like that? But
yeah, it's close.
Yeah, and he also had 64 tackles on top of the 21 sacks. Not much else here for stats. Like no picks. He had 6 forced fumbles, 3 recovered fumbles. But yeah, them sacks is what really put him over the top. You can get 21 sacks in a season, you're making a difference on the field.
Yeah, definitely a difference being made there by Wendell DiMache. Always been a defensive end on the field when playing that Sentinels defense, to always be wary of where he is at on the field. And you can see even also underneath him, you got Dondi Woods, the veteran beast linebacker, still balling out at 34 years old. But either way, it seems like it was going in the area of Orlando. The Sentinels had 2 big-time players right there, Derek Herrera, but those sacks for Wendell DiMache is what really threw him above and beyond those other defensive players who also had great seasons. But moving on now to what I'm pretty sure you guys have been expecting, especially those who submitted draft players into this league, it's time to move on to the Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year awards. And looking at the Offensive Rookie of the Year for the AFC, we're going to get a look at, of course, DeAndre Wilkins Jr., arguably the best rookie quarterback season ever in the RFL right now. And Bill, he's got you here with the stats of Wilkins.
Man, I know Coach Armstrong is very upset he didn't get that MVP because he thought he was going to get it, but Kerney came in at the end and snuck it out. But he definitely would have been deserving of it. 4,400 passing yards, 69% on his completions on the whole year, 30 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions, and his average rating was 108.6. So, I mean, rookie or not, that's one of the best performances you'll probably see in a season ever.
Definitely one of the best performance, I believe, definitely up to this point. But that's going to be tough to top for any quarterback or rookie coming in, to top that. And it's just a great story around this guy. He looked to be the obvious number 1 quarterback off the board and this past draft, and unfortunately it didn't go that way. He ended up falling in the 2nd round. And the Sentinels just was like, man, you got a gem right here. We got to take him. Coach Armstrong went with him, and you can see it paid off. But if you look at it right underneath of him, George McAfton, he was the first quarterback off the board in the RFL, picked up by the Pioneers when Coach O'Neill was coaching the Pioneers. And, he still turned out to be a pretty solid quarterback and promising quarterback for the future. But definitely a award deserving for DeAndre Wilkins Jr. And now moving on to the Defensive Rookie of the Year for the AFC, we got Danny Ingram, the rookie for the Voyagers, 81 overall. You can see right here at the end of the season. But Danny Ingram was an impact player and got to start, I believe, all season for the Voyagers. And Bill's got you with the stats.
Yeah, Danny Ingram has been creeping around the top 5 in stats for tackles almost all season. I've been having to put his name everywhere. So he's got 78 solo tackles. Combined, he has 139 tackles on the season, 13 of which went for a loss. On top of that, he's got 5 sacks, 12 pass deflections, only allowed 5 catches. But that is where his stats run out. So definitely a run-stopping type of linebacker.
Yeah, that's a great linebacker right there that I believe is going to develop into just a monster on that field. He definitely had to step up and take the area of Tyrone Brennan. For guys who remember, who's been around in the RFL, know Tyrone Brennan was the first linebacker of the year and was a great player, had over 100 and I believe 30 tackles in the first season of the RFL, and he was just a baller on the field. Old age got up to him. Danny Ingram steps in, and his first season, pretty solid year, and there he is rookie season, getting the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. Now it's time to move on to the Best Quarterback of the Year award for the AFC. This might not be Layne Kerney. Not sure. Haven't looked into it, but it is Layne Kerney. So, yeah, we're not even going to go into the stats of him. That's 3 awards. This is actually the first. It will be the second because in the NFC we've had another player win 3 awards, but this is the first player in RFL history ever to win 3 awards in the yearly awards in the RFL. We had quarterbacks, win MVP and win, offensive player of the year, but usually, I don't know why, but they don't even win the best quarterback of the year award. But Layne Kerney, he wins all 3, and you could see definitely deserving of that award as we talked about his stats. Moving on to best running back of the year of the AFC in the RFL is David Jones, an absolute beast. And Bill's got you with the stats, which I'm pretty sure it's just going to be straight up amazing.
Yeah, they're pretty good. So he had 353 carries, quite a bit, but he turned that into 1,809 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season. He averaged 5.1 yards a carry. That's crazy. I mean, that's a first down every 2 runs. And then you got average game is 120.6. And even though he had 353 carries, he only fumbled the ball once.
Yeah, that's big. That's big. That goes to show you he's just a great back with the ball in his hands, able to make plays happen and takes care of the football. And that's what you want out of your running back. And definitely some other running backs that are in the discussion. Carlos Berry had himself a tremendous year. Despite not being the fastest running back on the field, he still made plays, breaking tackles. But, David Jones really separating, using both a combination of speed, strength, and just ability to, just make guys miss and just make those plays. And like I said, taking care of the football is the number one thing, most important thing. He gets it done. Well deserving of the running back of the year for the AFC award. Now moving on to best receiver of the year award for the AFC. Of course, Keith Guyton. He led the RFL in receiving yards, and Bill's got you with the stats.
Yeah, Keith Guyton had a pretty good season. He had 83 catches, 1,679 yards, 20 yards per catch as an average, 104.5 yards per game as an average, and 13 touchdowns. So I would think there's maybe one other person in the RFL that's probably a little bit better than that, but there's no bias in that.
Yeah, Keith Guyton, this guy's been the real deal since coming in as a rookie in season 1 of the RFL. He's been here since the beginning, just terrorizing defenses with this flat-out pure speed and good hands. It's tough to cover this guy. He may be on the short end. He's not 6 foot. I think he's like 5'9" or 5'10", one of those. But he is
5'10".
5'10". Yeah, 5'10", and just incredibly difficult to stop, which is what makes this Huskies offense just so dangerous, because it's just like, if you got Keith Guyton, of course, to worry about. He's a handful. You got to double him, but then you also got guys like Tyrese Maxwell and Dwight Samuel and guys like that on the offense that can just really stretch the field. And, with a guy like Keith Guyton, you have to put more than one guy on him. He's just so fast, has great hands, and great playmaking ability at the receiver position. And then moving on, we got the best offensive lineman of the year award. We're not going to really go into the stats about that, but best offensive lineman there for the Red Dragons, Demarcus Degrate. And I believe that this award pretty much goes off of almost overall here. Not sure how this is determined. Maybe it's the amount of sacks given up per year. But Demarcus Degrate, 94 overall lineman here for the Red Dragons. He wins Best Offensive Lineman of the Year award for the AFC. Looking at the Defensive Lineman of the Year award, Wendell DiManche. He get 2 awards in the AFC here for this. Of course, being up there with the sacks and just having a tremendous season, already went over his stats. And so 2 awards right there for the Sentinels defensive end. And we'll move on to the Best Linebacker of the Year award. And look at that, Dondi Woods. He wasn't going to go without getting an award. This guy, 34 years old, still getting it done on the field. He came in as a free agent last season at the age of 33, and he just continues to just get better and better as the season goes on. Came in at a 98, dropped down to a 92, but still had a great season. And Bill, he's got you with the stats here for Dondi Woods.
Yeah, Dondi Woods was maybe a little bit overshadowed by DiManche this year, but not by much. He had 86 tackles altogether, 46 of which were solo, 11 of which went for a loss. And we know that DeMonte had 21. Woods was right behind him at 17 and a half, and he was like third or fourth in the sack rating for the whole season. So he did just as much damage to the offense as DeMonte did for the Sentinels. And then on top of that, he also had 7 forced fumbles.
Yeah, that's big time, especially with a guy at the linebacker position at age 34. He's probably gonna get hit pretty hard, like really hard, by the end of this season. Moving into Madden 20, if he decides to continue to play football in the RFL, but pretty sure he might stay around, seeing as overall still high in the 92s. He might be dropping down to like mid 80s or still like anytime you're that old in the 80s, you're a great player. He's 2 years in the RFL, 2 back-to-back great seasons, well deserving of the Best Linebacker of the Year award for the AFC. Now, Best Defensive Back of the Year award here goes to Parker Brockers, the cornerback of the Oklahoma City Bisons. You can see the Bisons, unfortunately, this is crazy, in the RFL, only league that where guys can win 11 games and still not make the playoffs. The Bisons, unfortunately, not going to the postseason this year. But Parker Brockers had himself a great season, and Bill's got you with the stats here on this good cornerback here.
Yeah, Parker Brockers led the league with 6 interceptions on the season. And while that's impressive enough, he only allowed 7 catches on the season, and he had 73 tackles for himself. Usually for a corner, you're not used to seeing that many tackles, which means he probably also helped out in the run game. But the 73 tackles, and it says that, no, that's all he had. So he had the 1 fumble recovery and the 6 interceptions along with the 73 tackles will wrap up his season.
Yeah, that's still a great season, man. And you would like to, of course, you want your cornerback out there strapping guys up. Like, he only allowed 7 catches. That's big right there. Not only that, it's just his ability to help out in the run game. And those are the cornerbacks that typically win this award. They're the cornerbacks that stick their nose to help out the defense in the run game. And Parker Brockers, he came in as a rookie last season and had a great season his rookie year, continues to get better. Defensive Back of the Year this year in his second year in the RFL. And, of course, the Kicker of the Year award. Not going to go over the stats here. Probably nailed every kick, but Adam Geisinger for the Armadillos wins the Best Kicker of the Year award for the AFC. And so that will do it for the AFC awards. Like I said, we're going to go over the teams, or go over each conference with the questions. And so from here, what we're going to do is, the Shamrocks are in the NFC. We'll get to them after we talk about the Cougars. But we just wanted to talk about the turnaround for the Cougars, man. The Cougars, just going back, trying to go to their schedule this year. Yeah, team schedule here. The Cougars are a team that were struggling. I don't think anybody was expecting to even get to the postseason. They haven't been to the postseason since season 1. Coach Dart took over in season 2, and now here they are in the playoffs. And the Cougars, they're looking pretty good right now, looking like the hot team. And since I got Coach Forsey here to talk about his team earlier, we're just gonna have a discussion about this team with all of the guys that I got on here, both Bill and Forsey. What do you guys think about the Cougars season so far, and about them making the playoffs? What are you guys' thoughts?
Well, all right. Well, to be honest, a lot of their success can be attributed to, of course, the quarterback. And if it wasn't for a few costly interceptions, Rob Slater might have actually been up in the runnings for the MVP, because his stats are almost right on par with Wilkins and with Kerney. 4,300 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, but he had 11 interceptions. And he was really the main focal point. Tomlinson went for 1,000, but he averaged 3.9 per carry. It's a lot of it was between Slater and Henderson, but I think there's a few pieces that they're missing yet to really be able to put those two together with a couple of other solid players to make a push in the playoffs farther. But hey, they got here, and it was behind the arm of Slater, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think the rest of the team has to rally around him to feel his locker room presence, and maybe the rest of the team can step up. I mean, the defense is stellar, but if the rest of the team can step up and not rely on the quarterback so much, maybe they can be a well-rounded team.
Yeah, I do agree with that, man. And just looking at the season that they had this year, started out, man, got beat by the Huskies. You know, that's always a tough game to start the season out with. Got their simulated win. Then they took a loss to the Pioneers. That's when we thought the Pioneers were going to be the hot team, finally make it to the postseason for the first time in franchise history. They get their little bye week, start turning things around. They beat the Red Dragons by a big margin here in week 5, 47-23. Really shocked us that week. I remember that. And they kind of went on a little bit of a hot streak the next week after that. They beat the Bisons by 4. The final score of that game was 24-20.
Oh, hey, Smitty, real quick. Huh? I don't think they said they can't hear 4C at all. I wonder if you have to do that setting thing on the party.
Oh, yes. How do you do that again? Does he got to go to the party?
Yeah. If you go to the party settings, and then it's you have to allow the chat to be heard through other people's streams.
Yeah. So if you can, Forzy. Hold on, I got it on though, right? Can you guys hear Coach Forzy right now? You said we can now. Is he still Okay. Well, can you guys hear Coach Forzy?
The party from your PlayStation?
Yeah.
You know where you can see where you're in the party, and then go to party settings?
Yeah.
And then see where it says allow your voice to be shared? Make sure that's on always allow.
All right, I got it. Can they hear me?
Good. Can you guys hear Coach Forzy now?
Are we good?
Yeah, gotta wait for them to respond. Said that's not Forzy, that's Bill. Yeah.
All right, I think we're good now.
Okay, yeah.
Are we good now?
Some crocodile
there we
says,
go.
yeah.
We're rocking.
Yeah, he just went on a whole thing talking about the Cougars, but if you want to still give you a piece about it, you can. But we'll probably.
I'll get my piece quick. Like I said, the quarterback play was good, but in my opinion, if they would rally around the quarterback with his locker room presence, you know, it could really get the ball rolling on offense, and it won't rely heavily on the pass. The defense is really stellar, and if they get that well balanced on offense, I think they could really, you know, get the ball rolling and could be an actual threat in the postseason.
Yeah, and I do agree with as I continue to go through the season that they had. You could see, man, what is this? They were before the bye week, they were 1-2. Then they were able to turn things around and go 3-2. Took a loss back where I left off. They played the Huskies for the second time. Took 2 straight losses to the Toronto Huskies. That's 2 division losses. That's pretty bad right there. Then it took a close loss to the Bulls. Then they play the Red Dragons. They beat the Red Dragons a second time. Gets them a little bit hopeful. Get a simulated win, of course, against the NFL team. And they lose a pretty rough one here against the Bulls. Now, this is when around the time people were thinking, especially me, it was like the Cougars, they're not going back to the playoffs or going to even make the playoffs at this point. But look at these W's ever since then. The next week, in week 12, they beat the Aviators by a touchdown, 21-14. Then the next week, they come up with a big win right here. And this is the win that got them to the playoffs. The wins against the Sentinels. And the Sentinels, they not only beat them once, they beat them twice, as you can see here. And both games were close in almost the same exact score. The first game was 13-9, and we could skip these. These are pretty much simulated games. Beat the crap out of my Dreadnoughts. I'm not even going to mention that. But the Sentinels, they ended up beating them and upsetting them again to get into the playoffs. Had they lost that game, they would have never been there. But this is a hot team that is on a 6-game winning streak, and the Aviators are going to be the team which they beat when they started up the streak by a touchdown, 21-14. This is going to be the team. This is going to be the matchup that we're going to see in the first game of the postseason. So this is going to be interesting to see how this one goes on. And for guys who don't know, Justin told me about this also in the Discord. For guys who don't know about the first game in the RFL was the Aviators versus the Cougars. And that final game did not end up well at all for the Aviators. Justin, I believe, told me the final score of that game was like 52-12. and I think that is the correct score. And so they blew them out by 40. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this matchup goes. It seems like historically the Cougars always seem to get the best of the Aviators, and they got the best of them in the regular season here, as you could see. And that's the first matchup of the postseason. But as we talked about the Cougars, man, that's an interesting team to watch in the playoffs, and a matchup that we'll be looking forward to. And to move on to the next question.
I was wondering if I could just add one thing about my thoughts for the Cougars.
Okay, yeah.
What I think is going to determine how this postseason goes for them is going to be based on two players, and they're both on the defensive side of the ball, and it's their young guys, Markel Wilcox and Javon Payne. If those two guys can step up and continue to play like they have all year, I mean, we saw with the Sentinels, they can stop people. I think they can make some noise. I just think that the offense needs to come a little bit more together on top of it, along with the defense, to really make a strong push. But those defenders back there, they could definitely change a game for them.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. I'm going to them right now just so you guys can look at the those players in particular. Markel Wilcox, man, he really came onto the scene this year with that big game where he had those 3 interceptions in a single game. And I believe he's either tied or has the record. He has the record if he's tied. But 3 interceptions in a single game. Markel Wilcox, 81 overall. He's a submitted draft player. He's in the chat, man. That's Ladarius Wilcox. You can see him in. And just a fantastic season for Wilcox. Pretty sure he's going to get boosted up higher than this 81 overall. But he's a great safety. Really helps out this secondary. I agree with Bill there. He steps up. It's going to be a big help for this defense. And then we look at Javon Payne. I think they got him at linebacker. It might have changed.
Middle linebacker.
Yeah, middle linebacker. Yeah, middle linebacker here. Don't let the overall fool you. He came in as a rookie as a 75, but still a great player. You can look at his attributes. I mean, his speed is one thing that kind of separates him as a linebacker. Pretty good in coverage. You can see right here, 84 speed with 90 acceleration. That's great for a linebacker, especially with his size, 6'5", 248 pounds. And so, like, a guy that big moving that's incredible. And if he can step up at this middle linebacker position, you look at the other outside linebackers he's got lead him. He's got Travion Langley right here, 82 overall veteran linebacker on the left side. And on his right, of course, one of the hardest hitting linebackers in the RFL, Marvin Woolfolk. He's just nobody you want to see in front of you about to deliver a hit on you when you catch the football. 89 overall, though. And he's just got great overall players around him. And I think that's a big reason on why he's been playing a lot better also in this rookie season. And I do agree with those points there that Bill pointed out. And now for the final question of the of this conference that we have, what are the teams in this conference? Pick one team for both of these. What is a team that you feel in the AFC that has overperformed and a team that you feel that has underperformed in the RFL this season? And Bill, you can start that off.
All right,
Go ahead, Bill.
You go ahead for us. If you got your teams, you go ahead.
No, I got to think about that one for a second.
Well, let me see here. Well, I think for my underperforming team, I think I'd have to give it to Dublin, the Celtic Tigers. I really thought that with Crowell, I don't know if he's going to be here next season. I don't know. I mean, he's getting up there if he hasn't already retired. But I really thought that they would make a playoff push. I didn't think that they would miss the playoffs, even if it was just a wild card. So that's my biggest surprise is not seeing the Celtic Tigers in the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can do the overperformers as one at a time. Forza, you got your underperformer this year for the AFC?
I mean, I don't want to be, that guy that sits there and keeps agreeing. But again, I agree with, Bill, because again, they were a team that looked mighty impressive, and it just seems like, towards, things, took a turn, and, it's a shame because, they're in Dublin with me, and, it'd be nice to see 2 Dublin teams successful. But again, it's just tough to see what happened there.
Yeah, the Celtic Tigers, I was going to go with my Dreadnoughts, even though you can see them dead at the bottom of the list, worse than the AFC. But I don't even want to talk about my guys right now. Yeah, I'm just going to let it go. But now that you guys did bring up the Celtic Tigers, I would have to say this is probably the team that I felt underperformed this year. And it's not simply because they didn't make the playoffs, which is that's a big deal too, because they've made it ever since the beginning of time for the RFL. And they were still close to making it this year. And the only upsetting thing about it was just the quarterback situation. Things were going on where they had Drake Crowell at one point, starting, and everything was, kind of up and down. And at the time, the Celtic Tigers felt, hey, let's try to get the young guys an opportunity to play. And not saying that is a bad thing, but when those guys came in, they didn't play bad either. It's just that the team as a whole, we can't really pin it on the quarterback. But I think once he left that spot, the team just as a whole just was not clicking as they used to. And it was just a down year a little bit from the beginning. You could tell it was going to be a tough year for them when it first started, when they played the Riverhogs in that crazy comeback win where Drake Crowell brought them back to victory. But it was like once Drake Crowell came back as the official starter on the scene, he changed the whole team for the rest of that season on, and almost took them to the playoffs regardless. As you could see, 10-6 record. They looked like they weren't even going to have a winning season for a minute until he got back onto the scene. And the Celtic Tigers, unfortunately, one game short of making the playoffs. But I would have to say this is a team that has underperformed. Now, overperformed teams, who you got, Bill? Well, one team. What team do you feel overperformed this year? It don't have to be the number one team, but a team that you felt that just made a dramatic upgrade from last year.
Well, I think mine is more based off of what I thought coming into the season, and I'd have to give that to the Conquistadors. I know they have a solid team, but I just thought that I didn't think that they were going to come out blazing at what did they take their first loss, like their 9th or 10th game?
Yeah, it was the ninth game.
They were just destroying the field every time they played, and I just did not see that coming. I think the 4th seed is actually a pretty good indicator for where I saw them being, right on the edge of a wild card team, but I didn't see them being as dominant as they were earlier on in the season. And I don't know if that was the fluke or if the, sort of the losing second half of the season is the fluke, but I guess we'll find out in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Forza, you got a team?
What is this, overperform?
Yeah, who overperform in the AFC?
I would have to say I would go with the Pioneers.
Pioneer?
They turned around their franchise a little bit, in regards to, I don't want to say get on track with the wins, but, they're on their way to trying to become a wildcard team. And it seemed like they had a little bit momentum in the season. They were picking up a couple victories, and they kind of like, I don't want to say fell off the rail, but they do have a good formula in place where they can be successful. And in my personal opinion, they're a team to look out for in the AFC. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I mean, this was definitely a team that was hot at one point at the start of the season. It was one of those undefeated teams that were left in the AFC. And like you said, don't want to say that they died off, but I guess it just caught up with them. They had momentum. Hey, we can win games. And then all of a sudden, once they started losing them, they started getting back into that we're not that great anymore type of mindset. And I mean, it still had a winning season, though. You could see 8-7-1 in a year.
Absolutely.
So that's a big upgrade because they were one of the worst teams last year. And, I mean, they're still at third to last in the AFC, but definitely still it makes a difference when your team has a winning season the next year, and that's big. And so, like, for my overperformer this year, I have to say I'd have to give it to the Bulls here. And the reason why I'm going to give it to the Bulls, they did great last year to even get to the players, but to get to the playoffs, excuse me. But they just did even more, and they came up with even bigger wins this year. Once Coach Melanishin got in there, also the team just started playing even better as well, and they were playing good on their own. But it seems like this team is now even more elevated with the fact that now they have a head coach there that's getting the guys in the right position, and They went from a team, you look at the first 2 seasons, didn't make the playoffs, made the playoffs on their own last year, got eliminated in the first round by the Celtic Tigers. They were 10-6, and this year they won 2 more games, could have won 3 more games, ended up getting a tie, I believe. Yeah, the first tie in RFL history on a live stream against the Pioneers. And here they are, the number 1 team in the AFC going into the playoffs, and that's pretty big. And I'll have to say this is definitely the sleeper team. Well, I wouldn't say sleeper team. Guys are pretty high on the Bulls right now, but this is the team I feel that has overperformed in the AFC this year.
Who would have thought that Layne Kerney was our MVP this year when it came down to the end of the season? It's just you didn't expect that to come out.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either. I mean, even though he was having a great season, even the last week, like week 16, even week 17, after the regular season was over, I was not expecting Layne Kerney to win that award. And he ended up winning it. So, I mean, he had the stats to also back it up. So, definitely worthy of the award. And this is a team, like I said, overperform, on the come up, looking to try to win a championship this year, not playing any games. But, yeah, so we'll save that last question at the end of the podcast. But now, I mean, it was a little bit of lengthy there going through the AFC. We'll now be heading over to the NFC file to show you guys the award winners for the NFC. This isn't going to take as long since we've already went through the process with the AFC, and now we got Bill, giving the stats and everything. But we'll get a look at our MVP for our MVP for the NFC here in the RFL. And our MVP, LC3. Definitely deserving of the award, man. Number 1 team in the NFC, led the Thunderbirds to 2 back-to-back 13-3 seasons. And Bill, he's got the stats for you.
Yeah, LC3 definitely had a really, really good season. Maybe not yards-wise, because there was quite a bit of guys in the NFC that topped him in passing yards, but he had 37 touchdowns on the year, which came in, I think, 2nd or 3rd amongst all quarterbacks in the NFC. He went for 4,373 yards passing, very close to 70% completion. 69 is what he finished with, and his average rating was 114.3 for the entire season. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's just an incredible year for LC3, man. This guy, I've seen him just develop over his career in the RFL. He came in season 2 as a rookie, led the Thunderbirds. It was the first year of the franchise. Led the Thunderbirds to the playoffs then, and didn't make it. They lost to the Diablos, who ended up who ended up going to the playoff to the Relocation Bowl. They didn't win it, and they lost to the Red Dragons. But the next year, he bounces back. He sends the Thunderbirds to a 13-3 record. And they win the Relocation Bowl the next year, and he continues to keep that going. Here he is, second year after winning, the next year after winning a championship, 3rd year in the league. And not only does he post up the same record, this guy has the best season of his career, over 4,000 yards passing. I think I believe that was the first time he's done that in his career so far. And if you look at his play on the field, he wasn't just that dual threat quarterback that was mainly all about the run, about running the football as he was. He was a quarterback first this year, and it paid off, had great receivers to help him out, and that well deserving of the MVP award. Now moving on to the NFC Offensive Player of the Award. Of course, LC3 wins that as well. This is the guy, I might as well say it now, who has also broken the record, or second guy, tied for first, to win 3 awards within a year in the RFL as a player. He also won Best Quarterback of the Year award in the NFC, as you can see right here. Well deserving of it. Great year for him. And like I said, fully transformed from just a sole dual threat running quarterback to an all-around quarterback first that can kill you with his legs. And so we'll move on to the next award, Best Running Back of Defensive Player of the Year. We're going to move on to Defensive Player of the Year, and that is once again another Toronto Thunderbird, Isaiah Ingram. He was the first submitted draft player ever drafted in the RFL, and if you guys look back at that draft video, that was actually my roommate way back in Wesley College, and here he is winning Defensive Player of the Year award at the defensive end position, 94 overall. He's definitely one of the top defensive ends in the RFL, and Bill's got you with the stats.
Yeah, so Ingram actually tied with DeMonte from the AFC for 21 and a half sacks. It doesn't matter how many times we can say that's a lot of sacks for one defensive player. And then he added 46 tackles solo, 63 tackles altogether, and another 14 tackles for loss aside from the 21 and a half sacks. And then he added 5 forced fumbles as well to that for the season.
An absolute monster there on that D-line, and he's going to be a terror for sure in the playoffs. This is a very hot team. It was a hot team last year. Coach Kazera knows what he's doing there with the Thunderbirds, always has his team prepared for success. And of course, he's in the chat, wants me to also bring up LC3 had over 500 rushing yards on the season, which is also even better on why he is well-deserving of that MVP award. But yeah, Isaiah Ingram winning Defensive Player of the Year award. Now we'll move on to the offensive and defensive players of the year for the rookies. And the offensive rookie of the year for the NFC is Kenny Steele. And this is crazy. The reason why is because this guy was injured since like week 7?
Yeah, he
injured
like
since week 7 throughout the whole rest of the season. His Barons go 8-8, and Kenny still wins the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. This is a little bit of an award that I would have to say maybe Madden has just did not get right. Yeah, I really feel, in my opinion, that Roland Woods should have been the
leading
winner.
Rusher on his own team.
Yeah, he wasn't even the leading rusher for the Barons, but I guess from the way he was going, or you could see this is what I'm seeing on why he won the award. He must have had some crazy game on where he went off, because you see he's got 525 legacy points. So he did something through the season that was memorable. And you can see every other rookie in this category at 0. So that's probably what separated him on why he got the award. But this guy hasn't played since week 7 and still wins the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. I honestly felt that Roland Woods should have been the guy to win it. But even crazy enough, he gets topped by Hunter Rosen, submitted draft player right here. And, he did have a big game also, the last game of the season that helped they didn't get to the playoffs, unfortunately lost to the Snowhawks. But yeah, the Tigers receiver here, Rosen, he topped over Woods, and it's just, I don't know about this award category here. I think it was off, but got to give it to him. Kenny Steele, he's your Offensive Rookie of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, though, we got DeJuan Forbes, and this was a guy that nobody really even talked about. I believe a submitted draft player as well. Guys didn't know what he was doing on the Rats, but pretty sure the stats going to speak for itself, and Bill, he's got it for you.
All right, I'm just looking for him right now.
Yeah, but DeJuan Forbes, man, he's a beast for that Crusaders defense.
Yeah, so DeJuan Forbes on the season, he had 119 tackles altogether, 74 of which were solo tackles. 11 of those were tackles for loss. He also added 4 sacks from his linebacker position and an interception, and 7 pass deflections. And yeah, that's his season.
Yeah, that's a monster season for a rookie, as you can see with the overall of 77. Definitely balled out and was well deserving of the award. And so with the rookies out of the way, time to go to the individual position awards. And for best quarterback, already said that was LC3. And we'll move on to the best running back award of the NFC. And of course, this goes to Darius Martin, who, once you hear these incredible stats, is well deserving of this award. He actually broke the record in the RFL for the most rushing yards in a single season for any running back so far. And Bill's got you with the stats of Darius Martin.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Jones's padded stats in the AFC. Martin had 405 carries. That's 52 more than Jones. And he had 1,971 yards, coming up 29 yards short of breaking 2,000 yards on the season. Had 17 touchdowns, averaged 4.9 yards a carry, and averaged 123 yards per game. And I think the better stat, I mean, it's not going to top the 1,900 yards rushing, but he had 0 fumbles all season.
Not a single fumble at all from Martin. and he was absolutely dominating it on the ground. Was a difference maker for the Elks when they were on the field offensively. And, even though they came up short of a playoff, this was a season to remember for Darius Martin. Darius Martin, a two-time MVP, a two-time Pro Bowler, and he just continues to be an absolute beast in the backfield for the Elks. And monster season, well-deserving of the best running back of the year. Moving on to the best receiver of the year for the NFC, we have, of course, Bill's very own C.J. Robinson, tied for the highest overall receiver at 97. This dude's an absolute beast. Pretty sure Bill probably knows this guy's stats off the top of his head, but he's going to give it to you out here, out loud.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like before, when I was talking about Keith Guyton, I said that there was one guy that might be a little bit better than him. This is the guy I was talking about, and I know that a few of you in the chat right now don't agree with me, but hey, I'm the one talking. So he had 69 catches on the year, 1,308 yards, which obviously wasn't as much as some of the other guys, but here's the one where he separates himself. He had 19 touchdowns on the season, and he almost had 20. If anybody watched the last game, he decided to sneak himself in for the final minutes to see if he could get a touchdown, but he couldn't do it. But I'll take 19. But yeah, he only averaged 81 yards a game, which sounds pretty good, but he definitely could have had more receiving yards, but I'll take them 19 touchdowns, and that's why he's the best receiver in the league right now.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of bias there, but definitely one of the best receivers in the league. It's hard to differentiate.
You're adding a couple of words there that you don't need to.
Yeah, but C.J. Robinson, beast receiver, and well-deserving of the best receiver award here. I got a phone call, my bad if you guys heard that vibration there. But C.J. Robinson, let me actually hit this quick message. Okay, cool. So C.J. Robinson,
Justin,
best
I'm not
receiver of the
disrespecting
year.
nobody.
11-5 on the year at Explorers, and I know they can't wait for their playoff games. This guy well-deserving of the best receiving award, best receiver of the year award. And like I said, 19 touchdowns. I believe that's an RFL record for the most touchdowns in a single season. We're going to have to look that up. I think that is. But we're working on trying to get all the history stats and everything done, most likely before the next season starts up. But best offensive lineman of the year, once again, not going to go into detail about, of course, the offensive lineman. But Dion Gunn, I believe this is his second year in a row that he's won best offensive lineman of the year for the NFC, and I believe this is the second year in a row that he has won this award, and he's just continued to top as the best lineman out there overall wise. I mean, he came in, I believe he was an 85 as a rookie, and here he is his next season. He's 96. He's been balling ever since he's been here. Great lineman to have for the Crusaders to keep up in Wakefield, and he had a much better season because of it. And then moving on to defensive player of the year, of course, Isaiah Ingram wins that. That's 2 awards for Isaiah Ingram. He won the defensive player of the year. Of course, going to get the best defensive lineman of the year. And we'll move on to the best linebacker of the year for the NFC, and that goes to Buckshot, as Coach Law likes to call him, Antuan Buck. That's 2 Elks winning a yearly award. Big season for him, and Bill's got you with the stats.
Yeah, let me just find him here.
Yeah, Antuan Buck, man, absolute beast. He was a dominant player last season. Made the playoffs too. No, not the playoffs. The Pro Bowl last season for the NFC. And he's ready with the stats here.
Yeah, I got him now. So I took a little bit to find him because he wasn't the highest up on the tackles. It's actually the sacks, I think, is what really made him stand out this year. He had 13.5 sacks from his linebacker position, which is pretty good from any kind of stand-up player. On top of that, he had 80 tackles, and 50 of which were solo, 13 for loss. He had an interception, and then he had 3 forced fumbles as well, and a fumble recovery, and only allowed 3 catches all season. 2 catches all season.
And that's beast mode right there, showing that he's getting it done also with not only with the big hits and making the tackles, he's also getting it done for the defense when it comes to the pass game and shutting down the opposing offenses from throwing the football down the field. Only 2 catches allowed at the linebacker position. That's pretty big right there by a linebacker. But like Bill said, all those sacks he got definitely put him up there. 13 plus as a linebacker. That's pretty good, man. That's really good and deserving, of the best linebacker of the NFC. And so we'll move on to the best defensive back of the year for the NFC, and that is going to go to Clifton Donnell, the defensive back for the Thunderbirds. Another Thunderbird winning a yearly award here. And Bill, you got the stats ready?
Yeah. So Donnell came in and he beat what we had over in the AFC for the top by 2. He had 8 picks on the season from his free safety spot, and he added 71 tackles to that as well. He also had 6 pass deflections and 1 defensive touchdown as well, which is the first defensive touchdown we've seen in our little talk so far. So he had a stellar season.
That's an absolute amazing season. And following him right there is if he didn't win it, Craig Chapman, who also had a monster year, was right underneath him. He probably just had less interceptions, but it's usually the defensive back that gets the most interceptions that usually wins this award. And Clifton Donnell having a monster year. This is a safety that I feel a lot of people sleep on. He's been a great safety for the Thunderbirds since the Thunderbirds been around, and a monster year. You can see him getting that done. 8 interceptions as a 74 overall free safety, balling out. And so moving on to the last award, of course, best kicker, Reed Callahan, and we'll just move on from there. Not going to go into depth about the kickers. And so,
I think we need a punter award too. Why do the punters are people too?
It's another position that we're missing. There's another position that we're missing as well, like the best tight end award. Where is that? I don't know why they don't even have a tight end award.
Tight ends and punters are people, and we should start appreciating them.
Yeah.
Punter lives matter.
Exactly.
They sure do. And they I guess they don't in Madden. So we're going to look at the other question here. And the second question, of course, is talking to Forsey. The shock in the NFC, the Shamrocks make the playoffs. And we thought they were going to let's look at the Shamrocks schedule. Let's actually look back at this schedule. It was an amazing season. I'll say a turnaround for the Shamrocks. The first time in franchise history that this team makes the playoffs, and it was in some dramatic fashion, but they made it. It wasn't probably the best way to get in there, not the best entrance, but they get in there. Coach Forsey comes back after leaving his the coaching behind in, I believe, what was it, season 2? The season before?
Was it season 2 or season 3?
I think it was season 2 because the season went by. Did the season go by? Yeah, I think. Yeah,
it might have been season 2.
Yeah, so season 2, but he came back and he got the Shamrocks right back in shape, man. And you can see he started out the season really good, 3-0. They beat the Barons 30-21, simulated win with the NFL team. Then they beat the Monarchs. Then they take a excruciating loss to the Explorers here.
Dun, dun.
And lose that game 29-3. And they take another loss from the Diablos 24-10. But they bounce back with some help from a simulated win. They beat the Desperados, go on a bye week, and they beat the Marshals. And of course, they face the number 1 team the next week after that, Thunderbirds, who ends up beating them and still put up a pretty good game. Only lost that game by 13. 34-21 was the score of that one. Took a second loss to the Diablos, which is pretty tough. Division loss 2 times back-to-back. And then they get a simulated win. They lose to the Monarchs. So they split even right there with the division. And then they take 3 big wins here. They beat the Steamers, get a simulated win. They beat the Lancers. And this is when we thought they were out, man. The last game of the season. Final score, I think this is the most points that were put up this year. 50 points by the Thunderbirds on the Shamrocks. But still, after the terrible beating, they still make it into the playoffs, and they got a chance to change everything. They might even see the Thunderbirds in the playoffs. You never know. And we got Forsey on here to talk about how his season went and take us through how you feel about your team actually making it to the playoffs for the first time in franchise history.
Well, it's an honor, for obviously the city of Dublin to actually have, the Shamrocks enter the postseason for the first time in history. But it doesn't necessarily reflect how I had the game plan. It also reflects the players I had. It reflects, Tom Wilson. It reflects Roland. It reflects, a lot of the players on this team really, gathered around. We had a strong draft. and with the strong draft entering the season, honestly, in my opinion, I expected at least to have a winning season, but I did not expect the playoffs. I did not expect it. But, having to get into the playoffs the way I did with this, organization, it really threw me by surprise. And it's an honor to get them into the playoffs from, what they were last year.
Yeah, that is definitely a crazy one because you needed both the Tigers and the Condors to lose. And he had to also worry about the Desperados probably jumping up over you to take that spot for the last wild card. But if it wasn't for, we're going back to it, if it wasn't for this win right here way back in week 7 of you beating the Desperados in their losing streak that they went on to start the season, 25-10, they would actually have taken your spot. And I think it's just, crazy to get in there. You just best them because of that game. It shows you why every game in the RFL counts. And then I also want to know in your head, what was you thinking when the Thunderbirds, like after the loss by the Thunderbirds, like what was going through your heads? And also, are you ready for the playoffs? What's your mindset going into the playoffs? And what do you think if you were to see them again? How do you think the outcome's going to be?
After the loss to the Thunderbirds, it was a little discouraging. There was a lot of things during that game that really, weren't executed as, we thought we did. We practiced really well. Again, it was one of those games that, Tom wasn't really on his game. Actually, during the season, I benched Tom because Tom was on a streak where he was having a couple of rough games after he was given a contract extension, and I think the money just got to his head. So I benched him and put in Maverick Hansen, and Hansen was just literally balling out. And, we decided after, I believe it was 2 or 3 games, we'd go back to, Tom, and and Tom, was back in the saddle again. He, was righting the ship. And this last game, I don't know if Tom just got caught up in the moment or what, but again, this is a really good team from, top to bottom. The offense, one thing I noticed, this offense likes to click a little later rather than early, but when they click, they click. Defensive-wise, they're really phenomenal on defense. We rely on our defense heavily, which, again, isn't a problem, but we would like to see the offense click a little earlier, score points, get a comfortable lead in a game, so that way, in case there is a situation arises, we have a comfortable, level to where we could still put our foot on the gas, but we can ease up a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. It's just a big accomplishment. Of course, your team went through a lot of struggles, and of course some good times as well, and great play, and were times where you guys look unstoppable. And at the end of the day, just making it to the playoffs for the first time, I'm pretty sure like now you're just fired up, ready to go, trying to get as far as you can into the playoffs, and that can't wait for your game coming up. And wish you the best of luck in the playoffs, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so moving on to the next question, which is, of course, who underperformed and who overperformed in the NFC this year? So, Bill, you could go ahead and start that one. Who do you think? We'll start with the overperformed this year, and then we'll end with the underperformed. So, who do you think overperformed in the NFC this year?
Well, I don't know if this can really fall into the overperformed category because I don't know what happened at the beginning of the season. But I think everybody here on the party and then also in the chat can probably agree that the Desperados are somebody who we have to talk about here, because if you look back in week 6, did anybody here think that, hey, these guys are going to go and rattle off 10 wins?
Yeah,
I don't think anybody is going to think that.
We're actually going to go back and look at this schedule. Coach Hooks was in the chat. I don't know if he's still here, but, man, what a turnaround by the Desperados. This is a look at the season, man. Started out as rough as you could get. Lost to the Gunners here, 7-19. Okay, first loss to start out the season, not bad. We could turn things around. Next week they get smacked here by 24 points, 37-13 to the Memphis Steamers. The next week after that, they were in a pretty good battle there in the division against the Tigers, 24-16. After that, they win an extremely close. They lose an extremely close game to a really good team, the Portland Snorks. This goes to show you they had the talent there, but just were losing games early on. So they lose to the Portland Snorks by 1 point. 17-16 was the score. The next week after that, if you guys remember this game, this was a game where the Condors literally came back and won this one. The Desperados were winning, and Condors just came back and won. Chase McCoy got the job done. They lose that one 26-20. And I think that this win was kind of what sparked it. They finally get their first win of the season. It was a very close one, a defensive battle for sure, but they win it by a field goal. Final score of the game against the Tigers was 10-7. And, we figured, okay, well, right now they need to start winning or it's season over. And this is when we really thought the season was over. The last game that we talked about when Coach Forsey beat Coach Hooks and the Desperados here at home in Ireland. That was their last loss to the Snowhawks. It was 25-10. I said to the Snowhawks, to the Shamrocks. I don't know why I keep switching the teams up. But 25-10, they lose here. And I don't know what happened there. The next game, they win by the skin of their teeth. This was the skin. They win this one with a last-minute field goal. They beat the Condors by 1 point. And then they just had a come-to-Jesus moment in Week 9 in the bye week, because after then, they just kept winning and didn't look back. They got some help here with the simulated wins, the 2 simulated wins here. Then they face the Snowhawks again, a team that they narrowly lost to by 1 point, and they absolutely destroyed them at home, 37-17, a 20-point differential on the win. So they're fired up at this point. They go there. They're home again. They play the Elks. They beat the Elks 22-17. Okay, Desperados now on a roll, but they're still down. They're still not having a winning season. We're thinking they got some tough teams still left to go. And the Barons, they absolutely destroy the Barons here. They beat them by 31, 37-6. This is when the team just really got hot. Beat them, got a simulated win with the Bills. They played their last game of the season against the RFL team with the Crusaders and beat them 22-15. And I would have to say, man, they really came up in the wins that they needed and got the help from the simulated wins. And they were just one game. All they had to do was actually beat Coach Forsey. If he had beaten Coach Forsey way back in Week 7, they would have been in the playoffs right now. But unfortunately, didn't work out that way. But it actually turned into a Cinderella story for Coach Forsey and the Shamrocks, because if it wasn't for that win, they wouldn't be in the playoffs either. And so, just a crazy turnaround for the Desperados, and I 100% agree with Bill on that. I'm going with him on this is the best team to, I guess, perform this year because of how they started out. And I would probably think that Coach Forsey is probably with that, or are you going with another team that you think overperformed this year?
Overperformed? That
Yeah.
really, in my opinion, turned things around. Is that what we're going with?
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say the Steamers.
Well, I'm glad you
it
said
goes
that, because I
different.
think Justin was about to pop a blood vessel if we didn't talk about the Steamers at one point.
Right,
I honestly think the Steamers really, turned it around. Last year, season 3, they had a losing season. It was a little rough for them.
Yeah, the crazy
But,
thing, they didn't win any games last season, man. Not one.
No. And they really, with the head coach, made the little off-season moves that need to be, done. They added the key additions in the draft. Going into the season, they really had, I would probably say they probably had a really, strong, I don't want to say like a strong momentum as to like feeling that they would have a winning season. Because obviously last year's debacle, probably, put the morale in the locker room, down a little bit. But with their draft, the offseason moves that they made, they really, made a leap forward, and they were a team that really turned, the franchise around. And, kudos to the whole entire franchise for turning things around. And, again, they could be a team, a real threat and things to come.
Yeah, I was so caught up, to be honest, on the Desperados thing, because they still had an amazing turnaround But to keep on the topic of like just the team that overperformed this year, I do agree with that too as well. I'll agree with both of you guys with that. Steamers definitely are a team that turns things around because they didn't, like I said earlier, didn't have a single game that they won at all last season. Now, looking at their RFL record, though, it's still not too good. Their RFL record is still negative. They're 4-7-1. But on paper, it looks good here. Winning season, 8-7-1. And, almost was dead last in the NFC. But anytime you go from a winning season with no wins at all, a losing season with no wins at all to a winning season, that's a big upgrade, and they definitely deserve to be mentioned. And so, lastly, what teams do you feel underperformed this year in the NFC, Bill?
Oh, I've been waiting. I know exactly who I'm going to talk about. It was my week 2 opponent. I don't know what happened down in Mexico City, but the Diablos, I just assumed that they were going to come out like a wrecking ball for the entire season, given the offseason and the trading and all the addition of all these players that, last year the whole RFL looked almost different just because of the offseason the Diablos had. I thought they were going to come in and I thought they were going to dominate. And, we saw that maybe the first few weeks it looked good, but slowly but surely they just, if they lost momentum, if they just couldn't get their, what's the word I'm looking for? They couldn't gel together or what, but something happened and they just could not play at all this year to what I think a lot of people expected them to. So that's my underperforming team.
Yeah. Coach Forsey, what team do you think underperformed this year?
My underperforming team would have to be the Condors. Yes, the Condors. Because a little fun fact, before I left in season 2, I was actually the previous coach of the Condors. And I had high expectations for the Condors. And obviously when I came back, I seen that the Condors, turned, the franchise around. And again, they made the moves that they needed necessary in order to unnecessarily mold into what the coach was, had in mind. And they made the correct moves and everything, but I just feel if they made, what's the word I'm looking for? If they made that they're one move away, in my opinion, for being up over the hill. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, they had a winning season, and I'm not taking that away from them because, again, they were, a really phenomenal team, going into, this past season. But I just felt they were missing one key piece. To pinpoint that piece they were missing, it's hard to, because, again, on paper and on the field, they were good. But again, in my opinion, just watching their games, there's that one missing piece that they needed to put them up over the top.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I do feel like the Condors could have a slightly better season. They were really 1 to 2 games away from making the playoffs. Honestly, this year, they're also a team for the first time in their franchise history that has missed the playoffs this year, and has historically been known since the start of the franchise in season 2 to be a good, solid team. Still had a winning season this year at 10-6, but just couldn't make it into the cut in the playoffs. That's a tough division to win in the NFC East. It always seems like it's a 3-way tie that comes down to the last game of the season, and the Snowhawks ended up besting that. But in my opinion, I'm going to go with what Bill said, and that's with the Diablos here, man, with the team I feel underperformed this year. And I 100% agree with you. If you guys can remember back when the Lakers picked up, all those guys that had Kobe Bryant, who else they had? Steve Nash, and they picked up all these star players. And you was like, oh, yeah, Lakers is about to ball. They about to win a championship this year. And then they just didn't even make the playoffs. This is exactly the vibe I got from the Diablos this year. They had all of these key players, all of these Pro Bowlers and superstar players that they took from other teams. The coach at the time really thought, hey, if I get these players, this team's going to turn around and be able to compete for a championship immediately this year. Well, those trades, they were big. It definitely boosted up the teams overall and everything. But the problem simply was that they just did not play good together. They were not, I don't think, how can I say it? Wasn't a scheme fit as a whole together. And because of that, they had great players on the field and could make some great plays, but they just could not click on both sides of the football, offensively and defensively, and that also put them in a hole because this offseason is going to be pretty rough for them. All those players that they got most likely will be released. And, this is a team that might go down heavily overall wise and then also just lose out and not be able to get much next season. Looks like they're going to really have to grind next season and be a team that's going to have to play their best football with players that, are less talented than probably the rest of the league. And so, they put themselves in this position and, they really underperformed. All those star players just really did not come up to standard. They had a winning season, 9-7, but, RFL record, that's 5-7 this year. I expected better. I expected them to at least make the playoffs. They don't even do that. And so, that's definitely the underperformer of the NFC for me. And to finish
what was their record last year, the Diablos?
Last year, I think they were 10-6. Matter of fact, let me go on the website here. I think they were 10-6 though.
Because
matter of fact, I think they were 9-7. I think they were 9-7 in the second year too. Yeah. Because
I'm just not sure. And the whole point of the Diablos underperforming and what caused it is really the moves that were made. We see it all the time. Roland just pointed out in chat about the Eagles in 2010. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but
I remember that.
Just signed everybody. They signed everybody, and there were Vince Young's like, "Oh, we're the dream team. We're gonna beat everybody," and then
that was a big mistake.
Yeah, and that's what happened here. The coaching that was done with Mexico City is really what brought them down to where they are right now, because you can't just put a bunch of random puzzle pieces together and say, "Ooh, look at this pretty picture." You got to make sure that they fit together. You got to make sure that it goes in the right spot. There's so much more to this than just having the highest overall team, and I think that's what was lost on the coaching staff with Mexico City this year.
And the staff that was in play at that time just didn't seem like they had the team's future in their best interest. And because of that, they just was in win now mode and did not win. And that's the ultimate price that this Mexico City team now has to pay. They were 9-7 too. I just looked at that last year. So last year they tied up with the same record, no progress, despite getting all these players. That's a big loss this season, and definitely the team I feel that really underperformed this year.
Something like that can set a franchise back for 5 years. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens
over
the next couple of seasons.
And that's a big reason on why also, we talk with the coaches. A lot of coaches, we already know what the situation was. Not going to get into it. But this is the reason why we need people who knows how to run teams, who are familiar with Madden and the system, to know how to run a team here. Because when you get the wrong coaches who do these type of things, we can't help out a team now at this point. For one, he probably should have never been the coach to begin with. But that's our mistake on that, and we just can't allow that to happen again, because now the Diablos, like Bills just said, this is a team that's probably going to be in the hole for quite some time now. And, we've seen low overall teams still win games and possibly make the playoffs, but, they're going to lose a lot of guys after this year, a lot, and free agency is probably going to be the best it's ever been in RFL history. And so, but this team really lost out a lot because of that move. And that's a big reason on why we got a lot of things in place for coaches in the league, and it will continue to stay that way regardless of the points brought forth, unless it, makes sense. But off of that topic, the last question for the day is, of course, talking about the playoffs. And this is just a simple question. Give me your reason why and on why on this. And it is for the wild card round. what is the game that you are most amped for, that you can't wait to see this weekend to kick off the playoffs? And I'll start with Bill.
Well, I mean, I think for the NFC side of things, I think we both know who we're each going to pick in this scenario. So, I can't wait for my game. You know, I think it's a good matchup. Me and Mitchie's Snowhawks. I know that they're the ones who kicked us out last season, and has not been forgotten yet. Mitchie, don't worry about that. And we've been doing a little jabbing here back and forth all season long, so it's going to be a good game, and it's been long overdue for me to get the chance to beat the Snowhawks.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a good game. Definitely some playoff heated rivalry between these two teams, and the fact that both of them have a coach, that's going to be a great game to watch as well. Well, Forzy, what's your game that you're amped for? I'm pretty sure it's probably your game, isn't it?
Hey, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'm pretty hyped for my game, hands down, because like I said, this is the first time the Shamrocks are in the postseason, and hopefully going forward in years to come, this is, you know, a common occurrence that the Shamrocks do get in postseason. But if I had to pick a game outside of mine, I would have to go with I would probably say the Cougars and the Aviators.
Cougars and Aviators?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have them up here, but yeah, I'm not even going to switch the file, but Cougars and Aviators.
No, I wouldn't switch.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill's game, you know, that's going to be, you know, a barn burner in my opinion. But I would have to, like I said, on the AFC side, I would say Cougars and Aviators.
Yeah, I really think that's a good game simply because it's just crazy how everything adds up for that, because it's like first game in RFL history, those two face each other. The Cougars beat the Aviators in the regular season. They both went to the first playoffs in the RFL. Both didn't win it, but and then here they are, season 4, first game of the playoffs, playing against each other. So that should be that's definitely a game that's going to be amped up. But for mine, I'm going to go with the Shamrocks and the Gunners for the game I'm most amped for. And the reason why I'm amped for this game is simply because of what Coach Forzy said. You got a team, first time ever making it into the playoffs. They got demolished their last game of the regular season by 41 points, but they're in. And I'm pretty sure that 41-point deficit loss has completely escaped everyone's head in the locker room, and they're just like, we're in the playoffs. We don't care about the fact that we got destroyed by the Thunderbirds. We're in the playoffs. And so the first round, they go up against last season's number 1 team, a team that went 15-1, only the second team in RFL history to ever do that, and still a team that you got to worry about. It's going to have great players. You got Coach James coaching the Gunners, and I mean, this is going to be a game I think that is going to be great to watch, simply because the Gunners, you know, they make it in, but they're just not the same exact Gunners that they were the season before. And the Shamrocks, they're a hot team simply because it's their first time getting in. And before that loss, they were pretty solid. And I think if they can get that quarterback situation down packed and figure out how they're going to move against this team, I think there's a possibility that the Shamrocks can go into Houston and upset the Gunners. And we could possibly see a rematch of the Thunderbirds versus the Shamrocks again that could turn out different, possibly, you know. And of course, you know, Coach Forzy, if that does happen, he's not going to go in there looking to lose. You know, I know for a fact he's going to put everything on the line to try to win that game. So, I mean, this game is, I think, is one of the most entertaining coming up to me simply because of that. But yeah, that's actually it for the podcast questions. What we will do now at this point, if anybody got any questions they want to ask in the chat, I see you guys chatting. My bad if we weren't getting back with you on some of the things you guys were saying. We were reading a little bit and, you know, covering some things that you guys were saying. Well, we still listening to you guys, and if you guys got any questions you want to ask us, feel free to ask us right now in the chat. What we'll try to do is take I'll say, I'm going to say 5 or 10 questions here. Probably like Probably like 5. We'll take 5 questions. We don't want to be too long. It's already over an hour that we've been going on with this podcast. But I see Coach Mark says, bring your parka. Where is he? Okay, Geo Diamond, we could take 10. These probably go by fast. He said, Geo Diamond says, who do you expect to take home the trophy this season? Now, I know these guys pretty much going to probably say them. But,
yeah, that's easy.
Yeah. So, is that the answer for you guys?
What, take the RFL trophy home?
Yeah, who do you think is going to win the relocation bowl?
I don't think it's going to be Toronto.
You don't think it's going to be Toronto?
Nope.
I think it's going to be Columbus.
I think it's going to be San Antonio.
Oh, you had to do that, didn't you? You had to say San Antonio, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we tend to forget about it. For me, man, see, this might be one of those I don't want to answer. Jesus.
We got a question. Do you think there'll be any upsets in the playoffs?
I do. And just to answer this question, the reason why I think there's going to be some upsets in the playoffs, well, the upset that I think is going to happen in the playoffs, Coach James is my guy, man. He knows that. But I really feel like the Shamrocks can win this game on the road, and not doing that, saying that just because Forrest is on the podcast here with me. I'm just saying, like, if you really look at it, I mean, this Gunners defense at times is, can really get moved down on. And all they have to do is really focus on Jabri Jackson. You take away Jabri Jackson away from the Gunners, and that's like almost an automatic loss, because without him, that offense doesn't move. Their receivers are not talented enough. They weren't talented enough this year to really make any issues in the passing game. They were like amongst the bottom of the RFL in passing yards this season. And so I really don't feel that their receivers will be a threat. But then I also feel like the Shamrocks, their cornerbacks are going to have to step up, and their quarterback is going to have to step up. If that happens, I think the Shamrocks can upset the Gunners. And then I think we'll also see plenty more upsets also as the postseason go. But that's one upset that I think is probably bound to happen. You guys got anything?
No, I really, upset-wise, I think I'm going to throw this out here, and Bill's going to be a little, salty, if you will, but I think the Snowhawks are going to upset the Explorers.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What you got to say about that, Bill?
I don't want to talk about it right now.
But
Thought he cut off the mic.
Honestly, with that matchup, the biggest thing to watch, if I take myself out of the coaching situation with Columbus, is it's all going to really rely on two people, and it's the two quarterbacks, because all season long, both of them have been up and down. Gadigli has sort of turned it on the last few weeks as we saw the Snowhawks really make great games with their offense. I know they switched some things up a few weeks ago, and Worrell as well has been very wishy-washy with turnovers and just bad decision-making. So really that game is going to come down to which one of these guys can put their mind out of it and just play the game of football. And that's really who's going to come out on top, because we both know that these guys can show up and be two different players. So that's what I want to see if I'm watching this game.
Yeah, a lot of big games, man, in this first round, man. I cannot wait for them. And we got Justin. He said he's got the Huskies. He got the Huskies. He think the Huskies and the Explorers are going to make it to the playoffs. There you go.
I like Justin.
Mark got a question. The player you guys think will surprise in your team's game? I would have to say DeMario Waters.
Okay.
In my game, he's been really, a good addition ever since we picked him up in the draft, and with the injury to Daly going down, and he just stepped right into the linebacker role really good, and I think he can make a huge impact.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Bill?
Well, a lot of my guys aren't really guys that would be surprised to see play. Even my rookie corner Baines has been having a really good season. But if I was going to pick somebody that's a little under the radar because of last week's performance, which is another reason that I decided to bench my players, is Leon James is going to get some more playing time this week. So I think he might surprise a few people. He's been pretty much non-existent all season because I've been trying to work with him and to get him a little bit better. And I think it's finally his shot to maybe play a little bit more slot than he has been.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see there because you still got Sheldon Shepard that you had traded for from the Dreadnoughts, right?
Yeah, he's the number 2 receiver. I'm talking the slot receiver.
Oh, okay. I thought you was using him in a slot. I guess.
No, they sort of switch out from time to time.
Okay,
depends on who's also playing.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, but yeah, that's definitely a player to look out for. There's both of those guys. Demario Waters definitely had himself a good season and filled in great for Stephen Daly, and also Leon James. That last game he was balling, man. And I think he's going to be a real threat that I think the Snogs really going to have to look out for in the slot, because one thing that they are weak in defense, I'd have to say, is the cornerbacks, and if they can exploit and open up that passing game. If Worrell has a good game, man, then Explorers could win. But then you also, like, I 100% agree with Bill. You got Gidley on the other side, so it's what quarterback's going to play the best football. I think is going to win that game. And Shamrocks, all they got to do, take Jabri Jackson out of the equation, get good defense. I think they can beat the Gunners. But any more questions? We'll take one more, and then we'll end the podcast. Thought the podcast was longer. We only been on here for an hour and 17 minutes, though. Our last podcast used to be like all the way almost 2 hours.
The time flies when you're having fun. My phone just died, so I can't see the chat no more. I knew I should have plugged that thing in.
All right,
I can't see no questions if anything's thrown out there.
I don't see
no more I love
questions.
The podcast.
Yeah, the
podcast went really well.
Yeah, I think it did, man. I think we should keep up with these for sure. The only, issue is just, in the past, like, we had school and everything. Everybody had school and work and stuff we had to be at. And so this is the best time right now, especially towards the summertime where a lot of people are going to have more free time to be able to run a podcast. But it doesn't look like anybody else has any question. Gio Diamond says pineapple on pizza. For me, that's enough.
Knock that off. That does not go on pizza.
No.
You get out of this chat right now.
Gio, get out.
Yes, that's a no for us, man. But
how dare you say that?
That's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for
You're
the
a
RFL
Marshals fan,
podcast.
aren't you?
Yeah, he is. He's a Marshals fan.
Oh.
That's gonna do it for the RFL podcast, man. Last message: just make sure you don't do like Gio and put pineapples on your pizza. I don't know who the
Friends
first guy
don't let
was
friends
that
eat
tried
pineapple
that.
on pizza.
Never.
Yeah, that's dead. But it's your boy Smitty, RFL commissioner and play-by-play commentator here. Of course, that was here with Coach Forsey and Coach Bill, and we'll see you guys next time, man. Yeah, great podcast.
Thanks for coming through, guys.
Yep. Thanks.